Let me start. Good afternoon, everyone. So, this paper is in a way very close to me because ultimately, as everyone says, my ultimate aim in life is to live to eat. So, let me start with stating something which had happened to me. Now it's been few months back. So it was after Diwali and few of my friends had gone out to eat and drink. So we were all happily hogging away, and then I see one of my friends, she was sitting with a bowl of salad. So me being the inquisitive one, I had to go and ask her why. And she said, because it's healthy. And suddenly her boyfriend says that she's not having it because it's healthy. She's just guilty, she's gained some weight over the Diwali weekend. Now, I don't know whether the guy got bashed up later for commenting on her weight, but what he said actually forms the basis of what I'm going to talk about today. So, if you think of a category like cornflakes, what are the things which first come to mind? It could be instant preparation, it could be convenience. But when Kellogg's Special K was launched in the market, what they did was they positioned the brand on attributes like appreciated, it will change your life, it will make you feel special, beautiful. So in a sense what they did was they placed the product on the emotional needs rather than the obvious functional benefits. Now for evolving categories, if we do a segmentation, what happens is that segments today will be a function of the basic consumer needs. But as the product matures, the consumers will migrate to more evolved needs. A case in point for this would be how Maggi, when it was first launched, it was positioned on, it takes 2 minutes to prepare, it's filling, and right now it's more about, if you share a special moment with Maggi, you share a Maggi moment. In addition, in terms of communication, the consumers are not sure what to expect from the product because there's not proper advertising, and therefore the consumer perceptions can be molded by proper product communication. So, for an evolving category, the functional benefits dominate the product space as they can be expressed easily. So, like my friend said, she's having salad because it's healthy. And therefore, the emotional needs in a way get lost because they're difficult to articulate. So, attributes like guilt, I want to enjoy life, these somehow they do not come out. So it becomes very important to discover the synergies between the emotional and functional benefits and to identify the right combination to facilitate proper targeting. Now, these were the things we had kept in mind when our clients had approached us with a segmentation brief for a category in the F&B space which was evolving. So, to make it easy for the consumers to relate to the various benefits, what we did was we took an emotional need and a functional benefit, and we combine them to form product concepts. So examples of some product concepts would be, let's say, healthy happiness, a new experience with every flavor, and guilt-free taste. So let's say healthy happiness, the functional connect is health, whereas the emotional connect is it helps you to lead a happy life. Or guilt-free taste, so guilt-free becomes the emotional connect, taste is the functional. And preference for these concepts were captured using the so as I was saying, the preference for each concept, it was captured using the matchstick method. So now when we got the preference for each concept, the individual preferences were finally calculated from this, and what we arrived at was a hierarchy of benefits. So if you see the emotional benefits, the first 5 attributes were something like enjoy more active life, enjoy preparing it, no guilt. Whereas the functional revolve mainly around easy to digest, reduce weight, it shouldn't be oily. So, if these only the functional benefits were analyzed in isolation, what we got were like 3 big segments which were primarily anchored to the functional needs. So if you see segment 1 is more about reduce weight, I want something which is fat free and something which is not oily. Whereas if you go segment 3 would be about homemade food, tasty, it is hygienic, it has variety of flavors. And if you see the emotional attributes, the ones with the small hearts beside them, they are all clustered around the origin, and there is no significant differences amongst them. So what we did in the concept-based approach, what we got was 6 sharp discriminating segments. And if I take the example of guilt, the emotional connect in guilt was I want something which will make me feel better about myself and will make me feel less guilty. And whereas the functional needs which stem from these basic emotional wants were something which will help me reduce weight or something which is fat free. And on the other hand, let's say a segment like experimentation is the emotional connect there is to want something which will allow him to experiment and which will give him a new experience. Now, as is the case with innovations and evolving products, with time what happens is the consumers move from the basic functional needs, which is let's say guilt, betterment and indulgence, to the more evolved needs. In this study it was bond and connect, status and experimentation. So the movement is going to happen from the left side to the right side. So what we did was we identified respondents with high probability to migrate, and this was done basis their preference scores of the emotional needs. So if you see the 3 respondents and we have 2 emotional drivers, and then these were identified. So if you see the second respondent has a score of 83% vis-a-vis 75% of segment average. So we considered this person that he will not migrate to the other segment, but the other 2 people who had a preference score of 64 vis-a-vis 75 and 58, we consider that these 2 people are currently there in the functional segments, but with time they are going to migrate to the more emotional segments. And what we did, we looked at their probabilities and then they were relocated to the evolved segments. So if you see the progression pathway, these were the initial 6 segments, and after the migration, see the segments on the left side of the graph, the guilt, betterment and indulgence, their sizes decrease, whereas the evolved segments, bond and connect, status and experimentation, over time our hypothesis is that these will grow. So if I were to sum up, this concept-based segmentation is an improvement on the existing segmentation methodology. The beauty of it is successful in finding interdependence between the emotional and functional benefits. It presents a progressive outlook by giving an indication of how the segments might be in future along with what it is today, and the findings are currently being used by the client to develop the brand and product positioning and the communication strategy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Devjyoti. I'll now throw open the forum for everybody to ask questions. Okay, whilst others think through the specifics of the presentation, I had a question, Devjyoti, which is around the fact that we use the max test scores to do the latent class clustering. And naturally we here combined emotional and functional benefits as part of as input to the clustering that's been done. Do you think would there be any advantage if we were to do a factor analysis first to discover underlying values which could be a combination of different functional and emotional needs, and that's something that could be used as an input to the cluster analysis as against taking the max test scores directly into the latent class clustering that's been done?
See, Puneet, ultimately when clustering happens, what it does is it looks between the relationship between respondents and relationship between attributes, and then it throws up the clusters. Now, if I do factoring and then come out with certain factors and then input them into clustering, in a way I'm already pre-deciding what are the segments that I want the clustering to throw back at me. And if the data quality is good, then what comes out through factoring should ultimately come out through the segmentation process also, if we use just the basic max scores to do the segmentation.
Also, I think in this example, just chipping in. Yeah, although in this particular example, it also depends on how many attributes you have in terms of the emotional and the functional. In this case, we had about 18 emotional attributes, and for each emotional attribute there was certain level of functional attribute. I get your point. So yes, in studies where we have more number of such attributes, we first check for orthogonality. Ideally in a landscape, you should not put, ideally factor analysis is avoidable in landscape for the simple reason is that the way it works, if you have attributes which are more correlated, the chances of neither of these attributes coming out on top is higher. So ideally one should do it before you do the study, but in case you have attributes like both premium and prestige sitting in the same study, one can do factor analysis and kind of do the further segmentation.
Factor analysis is primarily a data reduction exercise. When you have too many attributes, then
Sorry, your voice is breaking up.
Attributes, you're saying something.
no. So what I was saying, Puneet, is Ranjana here. What I was saying is that factor analysis is primarily a data reduction exercise. So like Somo was saying, if you have, say, in the earlier you might have something like 100 odd attributes in a study, and then obviously getting clusters with 100 attributes becomes difficult. So factoring helps us to bring it down to a more manageable number. In this particular example which Jyoti presented, that first day wasn't really required. Now, if there are attributes which are very similar and we have seen that there is a lot of fuzziness in data, then factoring helps. In this particular case, it wasn't required.
Yes, as an exercise it can be done. The only caveat is that in these kind of trade-off mechanisms, be it MaxSafe or other forms of trade-off, one should ideally try not to put in attributes which could have higher correlation among them.
Fair point. I get your point, Shamu. And questions from other officers, Delhi?
Yeah, no questions from here at the moment.
AMRB?
No questions from AMRB.
Okay, I had one more small question, which is, have we done a validation of this exercise in that we've been able to ascertain the size of segments as they're going to evolve in future as consumers become that much more comfortable with the category and more used to the category? Have we done any validation of the suggested evolution in terms of segments?
See, again, Puneet, the actual product, we are unable to kind of divulge the actual product. First of all, it was an international, across different markets, right? The study was done. In fact, it's a very new category that has been launched in the market and it's evolving very fast. While, yes, so far we have not been able to do any proper validation of this exercise because this was done sometime late 2014 actually. So we have not been able to do. But we see semblance of some of this progression already happening in some of the markets, especially the East European markets where this category is actually evolving very fast. So while no proper validation was done, but indications are showing, so therefore we cannot give you, we have not been able to validate the exact size of these segments in terms of how they're going to evolve over a period of time. But the tendency and the indications are such that the right-hand side of the segments are actually growing. And this is what is making the category, we would say, more competitive and more attracting new players. And also, this is where the growth of this category is coming in, from which the growth is happening today.
Thanks a lot, Shamu. Thank you. Okay. Questions? Anyone else?
Devjyoti, this is Ratna Kumar here from Chennai. Not a question, a little bit loud thinking. Looking at the functional benefits and the emotional fulfillment, could it be that the functional benefits could accrue to a different set of people and the emotional benefits could be to different sets of people? I mean, in the context of a typical household food item, food being served by the mother and the rest of the family, so in which case these two may not really, go in the same direction. Could it happen? So, in that case, would this really work? And what I'm saying is something which is tasty as a functional need, from the emotional fulfillment, it may not really go the same way. So, would that contra kind of situation can happen, and will it nullify the whole this thing?
No, see, ultimately maybe in a way the tangible things are the functional benefits, I agree. But behind every functional need there always lies an emotional fulfillment, and the other way around also. So when we did the study, it was not that for, let's say, good taste we had only one emotional fulfillment attached to it. So it could be good taste to make you happy, and it also could be, let's say, good taste attached with some other emotional fulfillment. So it wasn't a one-to-one relationship, it was a one-to-many relationship. So in a way we could when we had designed the attributes, we could capture the linkages between all possible emotional and all possible functional, leaving aside maybe certain relationships which did not make sense.
Just one point, Ratna, here. I think, it is possible for certain people to be much more motivated by certain functional needs compared to the emotional ones. But you see, as a category evolved, the functional needs, be it taste, health and all that stuff, become in some sense hygienic, and therefore it would be difficult for marketers to position themselves solely on those functional needs. So therefore, from the very outset, one of the objectives and one of our deliverable was that yes, it is quite understandable that a lot of people at this point of time would be governed by the functional needs. However, can we give certain emotional handles to the marketers so that it helps them to market the product in a way which would be more compelling and would be relatively easier for them to differentiate vis-a-vis other competitors and sell more effectively?
I agree perfectly. That is the reason why products which are targeted, or the promotions are targeted at the children, they talk about functional fulfillment. Probably the products which are targeted again on the grown-ups, they are targeted more on are built towards the emotional fulfillment. I think what you are saying makes sense.
Yeah, but let's say counter question, from a technique point of view, let's say you showed the concept as a mixture of functional and emotional. Can it unearth segments which are primarily functional driven and primarily emotional driven? It can, right?
The reason is essentially
because you are asking multiple.
You see, when you are putting all the elements in the pot, and if you figure out, if you find that there are say 20% of say group size who are essentially driven by the functional, and if there is a powerful group, that will automatically come out from the segmentation.
That is important to note. It's not that the technique cannot use that.
I think why we did that is that if we had done the functional and the emotional not in the way we have done it through the concept, the chances are the functional would override the emotional, and this is where we wanted to
this is what it sticks to.
Right, we should build a case.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, then I would like to thank the presenters for taking us through some very interesting work that's been done in the area of food product development, both from the standpoint of using design principles as also how we weave in disparate needs which are functional and emotional needs together in a manner where our clients are able to create products that are aligned to evolving consumer segments.